Filmmaking is an insane thing to do. You're working with dozens of people who are experts at their crafts, and a collection of actors playing pretend to create a fake reality by filming hundreds of little pieces of a story out of order that you then have to assemble in a computer later. It's stupidly expensive, it's ridiculously stressful, and it's also kind of the best thing ever. So, I made a movie. As in, one with a real budget and a cast of extremely legit actors and a crew of, look how many people we have in the credits. It's called The Dinner Plan. We shot it in late 2024, released it on Nebula in late 2025, and that's it right there. Also, this feels like I'm in a junket interview, just one with less flattering lighting. So I've been making different kinds of film things for years. YouTube videos and short films and a micro budget feature film, shout out to all the Charlheads over there. And on everything I've ever made, there has basically been no budget and no crew. So every time I have been the director, but I've also been the cinematographer, the editor, the gaffer, the sound mixer, the VFX artist, the costume designer, and sometimes even an actor. And look, I don't choose to work that way because I think it's more fun or it makes the movie better. I do it because there is simply no other option. But the goal, obviously, has always been to make projects where we have the resources to hire skilled professionals to do all those other jobs so that I can just direct, just focus on that one job. And The Dinner Plan was exactly that, a way to level up and make something on a way bigger scale than I ever have before. Now, I wanted to make this movie for two reasons. Reason one, obviously, just to make a cool, fun movie. And reason number two was to learn how a production like this works, how to work with a professional cast and crew, and navigate this different world. I wanted to do this on a short film first before fully jumping into a feature, so that when I get to that, I feel prepared. Even though this was on a bigger scale than anything I've made before, a lot of the same rules and ideas apply as when you're making a no-budget film. Like, it's still a movie, so cinematic language is still the same. And on the simplest level, it's still all just a matter of getting the shots you need to tell the story. But the process of getting those shots is pretty different. So now, having been through this, actually having been through it twice because I directed another thing last summer, which I'll talk about later, I wanted to share the major lessons I learned. Lessons that I'm going to take with me into every future project. Also, by the way, this video is sponsored by Nebula, where you can go watch The Dinner Plan right now. There are going to be spoilers for it, so if you haven't seen it, I would recommend clicking the link in the description, signing up now, and you can get a 3-day free trial, so go watch it for free. Okay, lesson number one, money equals time. Yes, obviously, time is money is an expression that has existed forever. It's a cliche that we all know, but it has a unique meaning when it comes to film. There is so much discussion about money in regards to cinema. We're all obsessed with what movies cost and how much they make. Cinema is, other than maybe video games, the most expensive artistic medium there is. Money can buy you famous actors and visual effects and locations, but the biggest, most important thing that money buys you is just time to shoot the movie. See, the reality is that you can only ever get so many shots in a day, and so more days equals more shots. You got the same script either way, and going in, of course, in your head, you have your vision for the ideal way to tell the story. But then, depending on what your budget is, you can only afford so many days to shoot the movie, and thus you have to compromise to get it all done within that time. More money equals more time equals more shots to tell the story. We were originally only going to have 4 days of production on The Dinner Plan, which has a 30-page script. So I was really worried about that not being enough time and basically begged the producers for a 5th day. And to their credit, shout out to everyone at Nebula, they agreed and we got 5 production days. And thank God, because we really needed it. That 5th day was essential. And yet, I'm still here thinking, Man, but a 6th day would have been a life changer. Multiple times during the shoot, our first AD, Kathy Sue, would come to me and say, "Hey Patrick, so we're 90 minutes behind schedule, so you're gonna need to cut half the shots from this scene if we're going to make our day." So I'm there on set, going through my shot list, making these mental calculations, trying to figure out what shots we can lose and will the scene still cut together without them. And to be clear, Kathy Sue would tell me this very nicely. She's the first AD. It is literally her job to make sure we finish on time. And here's the thing. No matter how big your budget is, this happens to literally everyone. I know people who have directed studio films that cost tens of millions of dollars, and they still had to cut down their shot lists on set because they were behind schedule. This is just a part of making movies. It happens to everyone. Which brings us to a related sub-lesson. Choose your fancy shots carefully, because you'll only get so many. We all watch these expensive Hollywood movies and see all these crane shots or dolly shots or Steadicam shots, and then when we make our shot list, we put in all these cool ideas for shots where the camera is just moving all the time. But those shots take longer to do than, say, a simple shot on sticks. So in other words, those shots are more expensive. And the lesson here is not, don't do cool, stylish shots. It's, you only get so many, so make them count. So for us, that was the split diopter shot, or the Steadicam shot through the kitchen, or the slow zoom from across the table. Not all of these seem that complicated, but consider that for the zoom and the split diopter shots, we had to rent a specific piece of equipment just for those individual shots, and then the setup for those shots required extra time. We also had a handful of dolly shots in the shot list, but then on set, because those shots just take more time to set up, we realized that we had to replace them all with Steadicam shots instead. But luckily, we had Calvin Falk, one of the best Steadicam operators around, as our main camera op, so he crushed them all. I'm realizing that as I'm talking about all this, I'm making filmmaking sound like Moneyball, which is actually kind of accurate. So listening to all this, you might be thinking, well, why don't you just move faster and get more shots? Which brings us to lesson number 2. It all moves slower than you expect. Look, we've all heard the classic mantra about making movies, hurry up and wait. I've always known that film sets move slowly, but even knowing that going in, this was the biggest adjustment for me. On every set of everything I've ever directed before, which, remember, basically never had any money, everyone was only ever waiting on me. So once I had the lights set up and the lens on the camera and the audio set up, we were rolling. But a real professional set isn't like that. So here, I would just be sitting there thinking, well, I'm ready to shoot. I would love to be shooting right now. Why aren't we shooting? And then I would remember, right, because the gaffer and G&E team have to relight the whole room for the next shot, and the art department has to update the set for continuity, and then wardrobe and hair and makeup have to go through and adjust the looks for all 7 actors. This is not me complaining. The crew was incredible at their jobs. We still got more shots per day than most productions of this scale get. This was just a necessary adjustment that I had to make. Because the more people you add to a project, the more stuff there is to do, and thus the slower it moves. Here is what our set looked like as we were getting ready to shoot a scene. So with all this going on, with all these moving pieces, I think it's pretty clear why this moves so slowly. Because like I said before, making movies is an insane thing to do, and this is how you do it. Okay, lesson number 3, it's all spreadsheets. Folks, I swear to God, you would not believe the number of spreadsheets there are going into a production. See, since you only have the budget for so many days of shooting, much of the actual filmmaking experience is spending a ton of time prepping and making an extremely organized plan, which takes the form of extremely detailed spreadsheets. And then, once you get on set and are making the thing, it's all about trying to stick to that plan on those spreadsheets as closely as possible. Obviously, many of the spreadsheets are just for the producers and the unit production manager, so I barely got involved in these. These are spreadsheets for things like budget, crew members, COVID tracking, equipment rentals, etc. But then there is the shot list. The shot list is not something that I scribble in a notebook on the way to set in the morning. The shot list is an extremely detailed multi-page spreadsheet that I spend days making with Valentina V, our DP. It is a spreadsheet that details not just what happens in every shot, but every lens, every special piece of gear needed for an individual shot, every camera movement, every camera position, which actors are featured in every shot, and how many minutes we have allocated to shoot each shot. Look, we all watch interviews with famous directors, we read about the process of Coppola or Altman, or more recently, like PTA, and we hear about how loose their process is, how they'll throw out their plan and make up a new one on the set, or how even Steven Spielberg arrives on set with no shot list and figures it out on the day. And you know what? That's awesome. Those guys have made masterpieces that way. I would love to be able to work more loosely. But the kind of time required to work loosely costs money. And most of us simply do not have the budget to afford taking the time to figure it out on set. To get a movie finished on schedule and without going over budget, you need to go in with as organized and efficient a plan as you possibly can. For instance, moving the lights to shoot the opposite side of a dialogue scene will take some time, so you'd better know exactly how many shots you need on one side before it's time to flip the world, because you can't afford to flip it back and get an extra shot from the original angle. There's this major internal tension that comes when you're making movies, where you have a rigid plan that you are trying to execute as efficiently as possible to collect every piece you need to assemble the film. But while executing that plan, you also still need the film you're making within that rigid framework to feel alive and spontaneous. You need to give the actors room to give authentic performances where they inhabit the characters and the world that you're creating and make us actually feel something. So how do you find the life within the spreadsheet? That is something that you have to learn on set. And it happens by getting to understand the pace of the production, talking with the actors about the scene while the crew is setting up the shot, so no one's time is wasted. And then, once you're set up, you can all get out of the actor's way and let them do their thing. Lesson number 4, have the editor on set. For every narrative project I've ever made, I have edited it myself. Now, I don't do this because I'm the best editor. I would say I'm a pretty good one. I do this simply because it is faster and cheaper to do it myself, since it removes an extra step of conversation from the process. I don't have to explain what I want, I can just do it. But I've always known that I don't want to work that way forever. There are better editors than me, so yes, guys, please bring those skills to my movies and make them better. And I knew that the dinner plan was the perfect project to actually learn how to start working with an editor, because this meant I could do something that I had always wanted to do. Back in 2017, I remember watching behind-the-scenes videos for Edgar Wright's Baby Driver, and seeing him talk about having his editors on set cutting together the action scenes as they were shooting them. And this just made perfect sense to me. Now, with the dinner plan, we didn't have action scenes, but what we did have is what is notoriously one of the most difficult, frustrating things in all of filmmaking: a dinner table scene with multiple people. In the script, we had the infamous Scene 7. Scene 7 is a 9-page scene featuring all 7 characters sitting at a table eating 2 courses of a meal. And then, after a few scenes in between, we return to the dining room for an additional scene. Anyone who's done this kind of thing before will tell you that this is a nightmare to shoot. You have to deal with eye lines for all 7 characters who keep turning their heads to talk to people on either side of them, so there are a million angles you need. And in this scene, while everyone else is talking, there's a whole storyline just happening from the perspective of one character. And the whole time, the continuity of the food on everyone's plates and how much has been eaten matters to the story, so we have to see that. Despite everything else in the film, the toilet clogging and overflowing, all the vomiting at the end, this was by far the biggest challenge. The house we rented for the production had 3 floors. The first floor was all for shooting and food prep. The second floor was for also some shooting and the room where the actors hung out. And the third floor was the production office. Our editor, Jack McCall, who was the regular editor on Jetlag the Game, was up in the production office. Right at the start of production, I asked Jack to focus on assembling Scene 7. We were shooting on a camera equipped with Frame.io's new camera to cloud, so as we were shooting, each shot was immediately being transferred to Jack to work with. So this way, he could have a cut of the scene ready while we were still shooting, so we could see if we needed any additional pieces for it, and then go back and get them before we wrapped and left the location. And let me just say, thank God we did this. Without getting into reasons and making excuses, on day 2 of the production, the day we were scheduled to shoot all of Scene 7, we lost a lot of time and ended up way behind schedule. Just to get coverage of the scene, we had to throw out basically the whole shot list and just do the whole scene in a single take with the camera on a Steadicam. And then once we had that shot, we started going back to fill in all the other coverage we needed. And so Jack would focus on cutting together that scene. And then every day, first thing in the morning, then at lunch, and then again at the end of the day, he would show an updated version of it to me and Valentina, our DP, and we would make a list of all the remaining shots we needed to make the scene work. The original plan was to shoot all of Scene 7 on day 2. But we ended up going back and shooting additional pieces for it on days 3, 4, and 5 as well. We kept going back to shoot this one scene. And yes, after we wrapped production, for 2 weeks, I was having stress nightmares in which I was still shooting pickup shots for Scene 7. This scene haunted me. Obviously, there are shots we had planned that I wish we had been able to get, but like I said earlier, ask literally any director, no matter how big their budget is, and they will tell you the exact same thing. This happens to everyone. And at the end of the day, the scene works. We got the essential material. It tells the story, and that's all that really matters. And the fact that it works is largely due to having our editor there on the set, who is, I should mention, a phenomenal editor who made the movie so much better than it would be if I had edited it myself. And honestly, some of my favorite stuff in the scene came from that one Steadicam shot where we did the entire scene in one take. Like when Griffin Newman as Henry drops the slice of tomato on the table. That was an accident that we left in because it plays as both funny physical comedy and a moment of tension. I have seen it hundreds of times, and I still laugh every single time. And by the way, all those pickup shots we got over the next 3 days, they only worked because of 3 very important things. Number 1, an amazing script supervisor. Rochelle kept track of every bit of food continuity, the wine levels in every glass, the placement of every item on the table for every stage of this. This scene could have been hell for a script supervisor, but she was actually excited about the challenge and absolutely nailed it. Number 2, an amazing art department. In the next room over from the dining room, they would have plates for every character with their food in different stages of completion, labeled with the corresponding sub-scenes. So when we had to jump back and get a pickup for Scene 7D, they could immediately swap the food in to make it match. So huge shout out to Casey, Denise, Izzy, Catherine, and the whole art team, plus Jen, our food designer, who made literally every bit of food that appeared on camera. And number 3, an amazing cast who could switch back to exactly where their performance was in the middle of a scene shot 2 days earlier and make it seem completely natural. A ridiculously talented, truly lovely group of people that I loved working with. Lesson number 5, have the writer on set. On this movie, I have story credit, but the actual screenplay was written by Jacob Torpy and Michael Curran, who you probably know from all of the videos and Night of the Coconut and basically everything that I've made for years. I have been working with these guys since we were all in high school. Now, I didn't even request that they be on set. The producers invited them, and of course, Jake and Mike wanted to be there to see a real film production based on a script they wrote. But when I knew they would be there, I realized how helpful this could be. So yeah, obviously I put them to work. When the WGA went on strike in 2023, one of the issues they were striking over was demanding a guarantee that TV writers be on the set of the shows they wrote, which used to be standard on network shows before the age of streaming. Most streamers stopped doing this, but some shows, notably Succession, would always make sure that writers were on the set, since the reality is that sometimes you need on-set rewrites. If a scene isn't flowing well, or if a line needs to be reworded to tailor it to the actor. And now having had writers on set, I can't imagine ever doing it differently. Having Mike and Jake there was good for the rare occasion when we did need to adjust a line or maybe add an additional line on the fly, but here was the most helpful part. So this is a movie about a dinner party, where often 7 characters are in a scene at the same time. And even when the script might have 2 or 3 characters talking, there would realistically be an additional conversation maybe happening at the other end of the table. Or take this shot. In the script for the scene, this part is describing what Henry is experiencing and feeling, and it mentions that everyone else is talking, but what they're saying is not actually scripted. So for sections like this, anytime we needed additional background conversation, Mike and Jake would prep conversation prompts, like a loose outline for what people are discussing, and specific things for each character to bring up. Basically, a bunch of bullet points for them to work from. So the guys would come in and give the cast the material for the conversation. Be like, oh, you start off and you bring this up, and then here's a fact you can mention, here's a story you can tell. And so we'd give them all that. I would call action, and then the cast would just run with it, taking those prompts and building off of them to improvise whole conversations that could sometimes last minutes. I had never really thought about how they handle multiple conversations happening at the same time in party scenes, and I don't honestly know how other people do it, but having that on-set collaboration between the writers and actors worked beautifully, and that's how I'm always gonna do it from now on. Look, even when your script is tight and it's locked, you're still usually going to need some extra material on set. So just have the writer there. It just makes sense. Okay, lesson number 6, plan on reshoots. Now, before I get into this, I need to qualify it. Reshoots or pickups are very much budget dependent. Giant franchise blockbusters from Disney can afford to basically just go reshoot most of their movie, which frankly is a wasteful and inefficient way to work. But whatever. I guess when you're spending a couple $100 million, what's an extra $50 million? But the reality is that no matter how organized and prepared you are, no matter how smoothly the shoot goes, what will happen is that you'll edit the movie, and then you'll show it to people to get feedback, and then you will discover that the movie has some problems. There will be things in the story that make perfect sense to you because you've been thinking about this for years, and you understand every single thing about every single character and why they're doing everything they're doing. But to a new viewer coming in, something will be unclear or confusing, or a character's motivation won't make sense. And then you need to fix that. Sometimes you can fix those issues all in editing, using material that you already have. But other times, you can't. And you realize that you need some new material. With the initial cut of the dinner plan, we showed it to a handful of trusted people, and they all gave very similar feedback, which was good. So we knew exactly what issues we had to address. We realized that we had an issue with exposition at the start to clearly establish the stakes and motivation. But also, we did not have the budget to go back to the house that we rented for the production, and we also couldn't afford to bring back the whole cast and crew. So here's what we did. we fully rewrote and reshot the opening scene, in which Henry sits in his car and makes a phone call to his doctor. The new version has the same basic structure that we originally had, but with the exposition reworded to make it clearer. And then we decided to cut one scene and replace it with a new one, in which Henry ducks into a different room and, once again, makes a phone call. Since we couldn't go back to the original location, we tried to figure out what could be a new room that he could hide in, a room that we wouldn't see again in the rest of the movie. And then I think it was Valentina who had the idea, what if he hides in a closet? So we assembled a skeleton crew, plus Griffin, our lead actor, and we shot it all at my apartment. My bedroom closet doubled as the hallway closet in the house. We parked the car in front of my building, and we got it all shot in half a day. And if I can point out the edit that I am the most proud of here, because it was so hard to make work. In the original scene, the one that we cut out, there's a part where Henry peeks around the corner of a room at Maya and PJ, and we have this POV shot moving around the doorframe. We knew we wanted to use that, so we wrote into the scene that there's a part where he opens the closet door a crack to peek out. And when we shot it, we set up a green screen to shoot the element of the door opening, seen from inside, to composite with the original shot. And then when Jack put it together, it just never looked right. We tried so many things to get it to work, but it always just looked fake and weird. The door did not match. And then we tried, what if we just got rid of the green screen door entirely? And suddenly it worked. Because what happened is, this out of focus bit of the wall in the foreground that the camera moves past, it looks like it's the door opening out of the frame. And so even though these are shot in totally different buildings, like a month and a half apart, it feels cohesive. And that is movie magic, baby. So again, on the subject of reshoots, there is always the temptation to fiddle with the movie forever and change every little thing to eventually, hopefully make it perfect. But once again, it comes down to money and time. Our budget allowed for this, so this is what we did. Also, during the reshoots, we set up a green screen in my living room to take photos for, actually, that photo for the poster. And since we had the green screen there, I asked if we could get one extra pickup shot, one shot that we had ran out of time for on the day on set that I had really wanted for, you guessed it, scene 7. It's this one. And I think it really makes a difference. Which finally brings us to lesson number 7. Directing is just answering questions really fast. As I mentioned at the very beginning, on everything I had ever directed before this, directing meant also being the cinematographer and the gaffer and costume designer and production designer and producer and so on and so on. And so I had always wondered, what's it like to just be the director, to only have that one job? Well, now I know. And basically, directing is just a lot of people constantly asking you questions, presenting you with options, and sometimes telling you about problems. And you have to give everyone an answer as fast as you can and then commit to that answer, otherwise it will hold up the production. So these are questions like, do you want these curtains or these curtains? Which lens should we use for this medium shot? What if my actor said this instead? Hey, an actor is sick and needs to go home. What are we gonna do if they can't be here tomorrow? And my personal favorite, which vomit mixture do you want to use and what color should the vomit be? Pre-production is just this for weeks or month, like a non-stop lightning round. And then it just gets way more intense when you're on set and the clock is ticking. So a more pretentious way of saying this is that you need to have a vision and believe in it. You need to know the story inside and out and what it's about at its core so you can confidently make decisions and not second guess yourself. Going in, I theoretically knew this, but it's different when it's real. When you suddenly have that nagging thought of, oh, well, I really hope that was the right decision, because if not, shit. But you just have to put those thoughts aside and remember that so much boring filmmaking comes from people not committing to choices, from shooting things in a flat, static way from too many angles so you can change your mind and redo it all in post. So yeah, a lot of this is just trusting your gut and relying on all your preparation and planning to guide you. Like one example, when we were shooting our second dining room scene, at one point the producers came to me and said, "Hey Patrick, so we don't actually have a clear shot of Zach Cherry in this scene. Are you okay with that?" And obviously, Zach Cherry is the greatest, and every movie should have more shots of him, even movies that he's not in. But I knew that this scene was all about what was going on with Henry internally, and that at no point were we going to cut to a shot of PJ, so there was no point getting a shot we weren't going to use. So I told them, "Guys, I know, please trust me, we don't need that shot, we can move on." And then when production is done, you get to lie awake at night and think of all the things you wish you'd done differently. How you should have used different blocking in that one scene, or a wider lens in that one shot, or maybe, yeah, you should have had more shots of Zach Cherry. The guy just got nominated for an Emmy. What are you doing? And this will happen to every director who does this every time. So instead of losing sleep over it, instead of trying to George Lucas your movie and change it forever, just move on and bring those ideas and lessons into the next one. And now that I say that, I'm realizing I really should have had Zach say McClunky in one scene. That really would have tied it all together. Shit. Maybe there's still time to fix it. Okay, so now to bring this full circle and tie back a thing that I said at the very beginning, last summer, I actually got to put a lot of these lessons into practice when I directed an episode of the upcoming Nebula original series, Subliminal. My episode, which is called Power Trip, it was written by Matt Kelly of Nando V Movies, and it was a very challenging one. It was both technically and dramatically very ambitious, and it had to be pulled off on an extremely tight schedule. And so, to make a very long story short, it went great. We were extremely prepared, and even with some unforeseen setbacks that cost us some valuable time on set, we still got it done on schedule and under budget. And right now, that episode is picture locked and is currently on to VFX, music, and sound design. So that episode, which is basically its own short film because Subliminal is an anthology series, will be released this summer on Nebula, who is our sponsor for this episode. Nebula is the independent creator-owned streaming platform where obviously you can watch The Dinner Plan, the movie that I've been talking about this whole time. And also on Nebula is a whole making-of documentary about the production of The Dinner Plan. This is like a classic DVD bonus feature type thing. And it even includes the thing that everyone has asked about, a detailed breakdown of how we did all the vomiting in the final scene. Oh, and one more important thing that I've got to mention, the new season of our show is out now. Our season premiere episode is currently out on Nebula. It's the new era of the show, and this episode is all about music video directors who became movie directors and why that rarely happens anymore. See, all of our videos premiere weeks earlier on Nebula, so if you don't want to wait, you can go watch it right now. It's done. It's out. Go watch it. And also, did I mention that there are no ads on Nebula? Because there are no ads. And if that's not enough, for the last few years, Nebula has been the exclusive home to Lindsay Ellis's new videos. She just released another banger, this one about the work of Trey Parker and Matt Stone, so you can go watch that too. If you use my link to sign up, it's in the description, it's here, there's a QR code you can scan, then you will get 50% off of an annual plan. So it literally comes out to $250 per month, which I think is a pretty good deal. And part of that money goes towards supporting this channel. So if you sign up, it supports me, it supports independent filmmakers and the new projects that we're working on, and you get a ton of awesome stuff to watch. So I don't know, I just think that makes sense. Okay, so I've got to pack all this up now because Dave needs to come in to record some ADR for a project. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.